All right, let's get rolling. I want to get going on this. Welcome everybody to our City of Coachella Economic Subcommittee. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. And ask our clerk to please note for the record the attendance. Both of our members are here. Going to ask if there are any changes to the agenda.
No changes, Mr. Mayor.
There are no changes to the agenda. Can we get a motion to approve the agenda? Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Something now, so you got a motion.
Motion,
Yeah.
motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second, and all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll move on now. Yeah, I should ask if there's any abstentions or any noes. No abstentions, no noes. I'll move on now to presentations, La Entrada. This is the second amendment to the development agreement. Is it John or John Petty? Welcome.
Mayor, thank you. Appreciate your time tonight and the council member and staff. Very much appreciated.
We'll give
Mayor,
that.
we have a presentation that we can present and then entertain a discussion after that. And staff is available to answer any questions.
Okay, Gabriel, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, members of the subcommittee. This item is regarding proposed amendments to the La Entrada specific plan development agreement. And this image shows you the specific plan on an aerial. The location is south of the 10 freeway and just east of the All-American Canal in the city of Coachella. It involves a specific plan of 7,800 residential units, 135 acres of mixed use development, 69.8 acres of schools, 344 acres of parks and recreation, 112 acres of circulation uses, and 556 acres of open space. There was a development agreement approved for the project, and that was approved by the City Council in 2014. And there was a development agreement amendment that was approved in 2019 that provided additional 5 years to commence construction for the La Entrada project. So the applicant proposes another amendment to the project, and staff believes that this is worthy of review by the Economic Development Subcommittee, and this is why it's presented for you today. There are some proposed changes that are requested, and so high level, these are kind of like 4 main changes that they're requesting. One is construction milestones. The other is affordable housing phasing for the project. Third is a development agreement fee, is changes to that requirement, and then last is a transfer fee. So as far as construction milestones, this table shows you what was approved with the current development agreement and then what's proposed. So the existing development agreement states that construction should commence within 10 years. And so that was from the effective date of the agreement. So that means that construction would need to begin by July 25th of 2024. Obviously, we are in 2023, and so that commencement, not a lot of time between now and 2024 to start this project. So the applicant instead requests to amend that part of the development agreement so that they can commence construction on the project within 7 years from completion of the Interstate 10 interchange. As far as construction milestones for residences, the applicant proposes that 800 units would receive a certificate of occupancy within the first 15 years of the effective date. They propose an alternative residential construction milestone as follows, right? So it's this one's pretty long, but I'll go into it. A minimum of 400 units that would receive a C of O within 5 years after completion of the interchange. 200 units completed 2 years following the initial 400 units, and so on with 200 units of 800 units to completed 2 years after that. As far as commercial development, they propose that under the existing development agreement, that 50,000 square feet of commercial would be constructed within 15 years of the effective development agreement. So that would be July 25th of 2029. Instead, the applicant proposes that a minimum of 10,000 square feet of commercial would be constructed within 15 years after completion of the interchange. We believe that, this needs to be evaluated with a fiscal study that we've asked to be prepared to evaluate this for the project. The hotel, the requirement under the existing DA is that a minimum of 140 unit hotel or motel rooms be constructed within 20 years of the effective date. So that would be July 25th of 2034. Instead, the applicant requests that there would be 60 units, hotel rooms that would be constructed within 20 years of the effective date. Actually, I guess that would be the same time frame, but a different number of hotel rooms. So instead of 140 hotel rooms in that time frame, it would be 60. In terms of affordable housing, this is the request is that under the existing development agreement, no change to the affordable housing units, it would still be 1,000, but that the phasing would change, right? So under the existing development agreement, 480 units would be built in 2 phases. Phase 1, 300 units, phase 2, 180 units. And then 520 units would be built in the remaining 3 phases of the project. What they propose is those 1,000 units would be built as follows. So 480 units would be built in 4 phases instead of 2 phases. Phase 1, 100 units, phase 2, 100 units, phase 3, 100 units, phase 4, 180 units, and then 520 units in the remaining phase of the project. As far as fees, the applicant under the existing development agreement would be obligated to pay 2% of the construction project evaluation of each new building to the city. And instead, they propose to reduce that so that it's a one-time fee of $2,500. In the existing development agreement, there is identification of a transfer fee. So if the applicant was to transfer, sell, or assign development of under item I 2,500 lots, that the transfer fee would be $50,000 plus additional 5%. Under the second item, it would be the transfer of 1,000 to 2,500 lots. If there was a sale, the amount of the fee would be $25,000 plus additional 5%. And if the transfer, sale, or assignment involved less than 1,000 lots, then the fee would be $5,000 plus an additional 5%. So the applicant proposes under an amended development agreement that there would be no transfer fee. Mainly why this is in front of the Economic Development Subcommittee is mainly because of the fees. Staff has discussed this with the applicant and believes that this is something that the Economic Development Subcommittee should discuss. But in addition to discussions on fees, we thought it made sense to bring up these other points, which are the phasing of affordable housing and then the construction milestones, which is critical for the applicant because of the pending deadline of July 25th of 2024. So that's the end of my presentation. I can go back to any of these slides just to kind of see the comparison. But I'm available to answer any questions. The city engineer is available if you have questions about some of the infrastructure timing and development timing. Finance Director Bill Pattison, as well as City Manager.
Okay, John, did you want to?
Yes, and I appreciate it,
Yes,
Mayor. And I appreciate Mr. Perez's presentation. we have a few additional items that I think were on our list that Mr. Perez did not cover. One is the term of the agreement. And the other, I think there may have been a couple more, but I know for sure the term we want to discuss, and also the development impact fee schedules. So I don't know if Mr. Perez wants to explain any of that, or I'm happy to kind of go into my thought process, the KPC thought process. But it's completely up to you, Mayor, however you'd like to proceed.
Well, I think it would be important that we hear from either you or Gabriel about what it is that you have contention with, and right now don't expect me to remember what was negotiated, years ago. How long
Sure.
ago was this negotiated? It was
2013.
2014, 13, 14.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you could.
And I also should present some things in context as well. The applicant technically is Lightstone Development. That was the original developer. KPC Development, Dr. Chaudhry, is in escrow to purchase La Entrada from Lightstone. And we are essentially acting as authorized agents of Lightstone. Lightstone has been monitoring our discussions with the city of Coachella. And I believe we are pretty much in lockstep with how we are proceeding. But technically, it is still under the ownership of Lightstone, and KPC is in escrow. So I wanted that to be fully disclosed to the Economic Development Subcommittee. The other thing that should be put in context here, especially when we start talking about term and milestones. The KPC Development Company, as you may or may not know, on the north side acquired approximately 2,700 acres on the north side of the 10 freeway, almost exactly across the freeway due north from the La Entrada property. And we are approximately, I'd say 85% through the specific plan and environmental impact report. And great, that's a great slide, and I appreciate that being put up. The northerly property we refer to as KPC Coachella. That project is slated currently for approximately 9,300 plus or minus dwelling units, and approximately 1.5 million square feet of mixed use commercial. So when we start talking about milestones and terms, I think we need to put it in the proper context that these two projects combined would have in excess of 17,200 or 300 dwelling units and a future build out population of approximately 52,000 people. It would combine with the current, and of course, you know that these properties are both within the municipal boundaries of the city of Coachella. So with the new combined projects here, there'll still be standalone projects. We will have some connectivity underneath the 10 freeway, but the two combined projects plus the existing city of Coachella at build out, and we're projecting build out at somewhere between 20 and 25 years, would create the largest city in the Coachella Valley, well over 100,000 people. And so I just wanted to put that in context as we move through some of these points. And by the way, our proposed Second Amendment has, I don't know, 5 or 6 pages of points. And in our discussions with your staff, we've, I think, narrowed it down to just a few outstanding points. So I think we've actually come a long way with staff. Obviously, the city council has final say on all of what we're doing. But I think working with your staff has been very productive, and we've narrowed our scope of discussion, I think, considerably.
John, what question? Gabriel and maybe Gabe and Andrew. So, I mean, John makes a very interesting point that they are, one, acquiring this property from Lightstone, KPC is, that is, that, and then two, that at least the way they're looking at it, they're trying to look at both projects in their entirety. And so as we're negotiating this DA agreement, I imagine we're negotiating two DA agreements.
Just one,
No,
with
just
this,
one.
just one.
No, but doesn't the other specific plan have a DA agreement?
It will,
And not yet, no.
but not yet.
So not yet,
They're gonna be under the same ownership, but we want them standalone projects, but obviously.
but okay, so then if
they're gonna
we're,
be in sync with each other.
so if you want us to consider the projects in its entirety, then it as a whole, two units as a whole, shouldn't we consider the DA agreements kind of as a whole too? I mean,
Mayor, I
I
mentioned.
don't want to be here negotiating against myself on the next DA agreement as well.
Absolutely, understood and appreciate. And I only mentioned that because when we talk about 17,000 plus dwelling units and what's the current absorption of dwelling units in not only the city of Coachella, but surrounding cities. I mean, we're talking about a project that is one of the, I think, and I was actually on the Riverside County Planning Commission when we approved Travertine Point. I think that the combined project here would actually have more dwelling units than Travertine Point, if you're familiar with that project to the south of the city of Coachella. But
Sure.
I think this would actually be either the largest, if Ron Goldman were on the line, he would probably know, either the largest or certainly in the top three largest collection of dwelling units in one location. I'll put it that way, even though they're two standalone projects. I just wanted to get the
Okay.
immensity of the projects conveyed to the Economic Development Subcommittee.
Okay, I want to go to the slide where it talks about commercial square footage.
Yeah, and actually, when we got together with the applicants, with John and the group, we went through the DA. In fact, Gabe, I would recommend that you put up the markups that we put on the DA that was sent to us, and we go through those like we did when we met with the applicant. It's been about 3 weeks ago, because John's right. We missed some points there. There
Yeah.
were stuff about when we're going to build a fire station, how much they were going to contribute, when the building would actually, there's a back and forth between staff and the applicant. And so I think we need to go through those things. So
you
council
do?
gets a full.
You do, and you need to be fair to the new members. I think I'm the only one that's around from 20.
Yeah, that's why I think it'd be
14.
important to go step by step through the DA
Uh-huh.
like we did with the applicant originally. I
Yeah.
think it'll give a broader context, and then we can also have point counterpoint where the applicant's asking for something and then staff has asked for something different, and then we discuss it at that point so that you can hear both sides of what
Mhm.
went on at the table that day.
Mhm. And
Yes,
and-
please.
and keep in mind, we're not gonna probably get it all negotiated tonight. I
Of
mean,
course,
so this
understood.
probably needs to be, this is kind of like your educational portion right now. Well, but we will schedule meetings quickly to get
And
this.
Gabe,
you
if
guys
there's
are-
a way that you can zoom in on it so that it can, the writing can be larger so that the council members can see.
Well, I think,
We're working on there. Right now, it's definitely two separate projects.
well, okay, well, we appreciate Lifestone being on and I mean, they've been good, partners with Coachella, and I imagine Terry Manley's no longer involved in this but if you guys, John's a new Terry, or Sam's a new Terry, whoever it is, fine.
No, you're not.
Yeah, no, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
I think they're appropriate, so. In context, it does make sense, but just technically, I think they're saying because of the ownership, they have to be two separate, but you're right, to look at the build out,
Mhm.
and in its entirety makes perfect sense.
I think so. I mean, like for example, if I were to, just on one point alone that was brought up on the commercials, like reduction of commercial square feet. if I didn't know that you guys were building 1 million square feet on the other side. That'd kind of be weird, like, it's like,
Well-
hey, what's,
We've discussed that because there also is a fiscal study being done because there's
Right.
going to be an ask to reduce the public safety CFD, and to be able to do that like we did with Lantrada, there was a fiscal study that supported reducing it because basically that would be another CFD. It wouldn't be the 2005, it would be the 2024, CFD one. And it would have a different rate and method because you would take everything going on up there, like the TOT generated, the property tax generated, and sales tax generated, to offset the effects of public safety in those two areas so that we
Understood.
could reduce the fee, because at some point they're going to need to bond to pay for infrastructure, and that would all be on a reimbursement basis. And that's what we've negotiated with Lantrada in the first place. So
yeah, I do.
they're
remember that.
kind of mirror that. But when we got to the point and they were talking about reducing, I said that that's all based upon the fiscal impact study, because if they did, it's going to increase what they're going to have to
Mhm.
pay for the CFD. So that's going to be
And-
give and take.
Fiscal impact study is a study that helps us understand what are gonna be our fiscal impacts to deliver services.
Yes. And that's
Yes.
being worked on
It's-
right now.
Yeah, and then so that would cover police, fire, water, sewer, public works.
Just for the most part, things that would impact the general fund, and then, for public safety, that's the major impact to
Mhm.
the general fund. So we just want to make sure that there's going to be enough generation of revenue there to support basically the Coachella East
Mhm.
and be able to pay for those services and reduce the CFD so that there's some available monies for infrastructure, because the investment up there is going to be beyond massive.
Big, it's
for
big
gas.
investment.
So they know how much to run through this. On estimation, so you can go faster or slower through it. It is a lot.
Like 20 minutes, I think it's important that at least that we go through this, and if we have to have another meeting next week, we'll have another meeting. We'll really kind of go through this. I mean, Ned, I'd like to understand your guys' timelines or constraints. 'Cause, escrow.
Well, yes, Mayor, we have a due diligence period that we're rapidly burning through, and we are negotiating to extend that. Given what we see is going to be a very thorough and involved process with both the Economic Development Subcommittee as well as the Planning Commission and the Council.
Mhm.
So we do have time constraints with our deal with Lightstone. So we are going to want to move as quickly as possible, but taking no shortcuts whatsoever.
Well, sooner or later, you could tell us those time constraints. Should be great, and that way we can try to move accordingly through this and be due diligent. We
Well-
want to be as helpful, but if we need to extend if you guys need to extend the escrow, that's, to look at that, but.
Yeah, and it's not going to come without a price tag from Lightstone, and we're doing what we can do. But as has been pointed out, it just makes ultimately good sense for one owner as a master developer to do both projects. There's tremendous synergy, and there's also, we talked about adding some additional tools in the economic development toolbox. For example, the enhanced infrastructure districts, development districts, financing districts, sometimes referred to as redevelopment light. But with all vacant land here, that really makes a tremendous amount of sense to explore the EIFD and other options that we're talking about in the economic development toolbox, so to speak.
Yeah, we need to talk about all that. All right, Gabriel, if you want to go down line by line with you discuss with
Yeah, we can go through it. Most of the items that are on here that we're gonna go through were on that presentation. I think the biggest thing was the term, but we'll go through it. We have some comments on here that, so not much change here. It just some of the definitions that are included in the proposed amendment. Obviously, they wanted the changes to the development agreement fee, which was in the presentation. definitions of what interchange means, so I don't see any need to discuss that. And any of the staff there that's at the meeting, if you see anything that comes up, please.
I think Mr. Perez is correct in that or Bill Pattison maybe pointed it out, that some of these items are just cleanup items and really not substantive in a economic development standpoint context. But I think our first substantive item is the term, and that's section 8.3. And I think that's where Mr. Perez is now in the document.
Okay, so can we see that term and what is their ask, Gabriel?
Yeah, so the term, they're requesting that the term of the agreement be 25 years from the effective date of this development agreement. Right, so the original was 15 years. And so this would be 25 years from a new effective date. And so our comment here is that this is really too long, right? Let's say this development agreement is adopted this year, 2023. Well, that would be 25 years from now. What we were more comfortable.
No, sorry, Mr. Perez. It's 25 years from the effective date. So that would be 2014.
Okay, from 2014. But what we were more comfortable with as staff was that the term would be 10 years first, right? And then the applicant would have the option for an extension for 5 years. Subsequent extensions up to a maximum of 25 years. So instead of just a one-time term of 25 years, after 10 years, they would have to request those extensions.
And our issues, Mayor and Councilwoman, is that, well, there's several. One is the 10-year term has the initial term expiring in 2024 then, which is obviously next year. I should have mentioned in my initial comments, this whole project, and I mean the project meaning both sides of Interstate 10, absolutely goes nowhere without the Interstate 10 interchange. And that should have been incorporated. I don't know why it was not incorporated in the original DA, but I think staff acknowledges, and we certainly acknowledge that we have nothing without the Interstate 10 interchange. And I should mention, by the way, that there is a successor to the BUILD grant, which is the RAISE grant, that we worked with your staff very diligently. It was kind of a hurry up drill to get it in by the February 28th deadline. But we paid Kimley Horn a premium, and your staff was extremely helpful. So I wanted to give kudos and let the council members know that your staff did a great job. And
John, I think, thank you. And I agree with you that without that interchange, both of these specific plans are not going anywhere.
right.
You know, and I also agree that if we're going through this exercise today, and that if we're going to be in front of the city council looking for an amendment, I don't want this on calendar next year again. So if we're gonna, and why? Because we're not gonna build a bridge by next year.
Correct.
Just to be honest with you all. Yeah.
I think the 10-year term is would start with the DA and give them 10 years to provide an update. So, you know, 10 years ago, we had this initial conversation. 10 years today, we're having this conversation. 10 years from now, we would like the developer and whoever is on city staff to have this conversation again. 25 years is a big time frame, unrealistic. You know, this kind of holds the developer accountable and giving the city updates on their progress.
John doesn't understand it that way.
Well, if I can kind of shift to the market realities that we have to deal with, especially in dealing with lenders.
10 years from this year.
We do need certainty, and I want to put it also in some context. The original term right now is 15 years, and it would expire in July of 2029. That's what you have with Lightstone right now. And, you know, Lightstone has had since 2014 to do something with this project. I'm not casting any stones at Lightstone. They have, for whatever reason, decided to do other things. And obviously, this project hasn't been a major focus for them. And that's fine. It unfortunately puts the milestones in a default position, and it puts the term basically of the original term of 15 years. You essentially have 9 years that have already been eaten up by a original developer that we obviously had no connection to, and we're trying to, you know, put a new face on this project and jumpstart it, if you will. And so we're, as I mentioned before, in the proper context of both projects, asking for a 25-year initial term is not unusual with this scope of a project. So that's what we would offer up from our side.
At least right now, the way I'm looking at this right now, 100% of this initial term is nothing right now.
Correct.
It's nothing. I mean, we've got 9 years of a deal that the economy, whatever reasons with Lightstone, et cetera, it didn't happen. So we have to really kind of think of, I don't want to, like, the terms got to be kind of thought of new. And I don't believe that a 25-year term is probably the deal, but, you know, maybe it's 20, and maybe we have kickers, you know, every, what, 7 years or something like that, and some could be administrative, some can be council related. But while I appreciate the terms in 2014, I mean, the only thing that's been digging out there is maybe a burly owl or
Don't say that.
no, I don't know, you know, but it just, you know, I mean, maybe a desert squirrel or a fox, you know what I mean? But I'm just, I'm just saying is that like we can be flexible there, because, and then to be fair, if Lightstone is no longer at this dance, and then we have KPC that's also going to be doing another specific plan with us, and we're going to have 17,000 units in totality with 50,000 new residents. I mean, if we're like, that's going to be the confusing thing, is like, how can we look at this as a whole and not so much individual?
I just mentioned it to let you know that both
10
sides are
years.
going to be.
Oh, wait, can,
Sorry.
When we spoke with the group, well, the point is when the DA was finished being negotiated, at that point, it would be 10 years. And then there would be 3 5-year additional options to get them to the 25 years. What we didn't want to do was lock it up for another 10 years and have nothing happen again.
Okay.
At least at that point, we know 10 years. If nothing's happened again, we're not going to do the additional 3 5-year things. At least it gives us the option to make sure that the project's moving along. That's
So then what
staff was
does the
believing.
deal look like now? It's a 10-year with 3
The-
5-year options?
That's what staff recommended back as a counter to them. Yes.
But
It's
10 years.
25 years, it's still 25 years.
So-
The starting
Right.
date's when the DA is renegotiated. So the starting date's whenever we get to council and council approves it, then that's when the clock starts.
So I think, you know, I'm kind of looking at this from kind of the outside, kind of being in the room when all of this was negotiated. And I'm hoping, you know, Andrew jumps in, because I think a lot of it has to do with these realities also that the project has mentioned, that, you know, everything is dependent on the interchange. And so we know that everything's dependent on the interchange. So 10 years to do the interchange seems to be something fair that you can come back in 10 years and kind of analyze where you're at. And it also, I think one of our biggest hurdles was the project asking us to kind of to lock in place certain benefits for the project that also the way they propose it doesn't seem to have addendum, like it doesn't, it could carry on. And so it's like, okay, well, we want to be fair, but also don't lock us into something that then's just going to continue for another, 25 years. If things need to get relooked at in 10 years, then things get relooked at in 10 years. And we had an extensive conversation between staff, including Andrew, who kind of looked a lot of on the infrastructure side. So I'm kind of thinking, Andrew, maybe you kind of get to talk a little bit about, the thinking behind that. So I just feel like we're kind of going back and forth.
Well, the other issue too that we haven't addressed yet was when the clock starts, because there's a request later on that things start to happen when they pull permits 7 years after the interchange is done, but there's no definitive start date. So also staff wanted to tighten that up too, where we gave them 5 years, and if the interchange isn't built, then you're still on the clock and you have to still do something within a certain amount of time. We didn't want to leave that initial window open waiting on the interchange, because the interchange might not ever happen, or it could be 15 years. And
I mean,
if
my
things
point-
happen, if we see progress, then we can go in and renegotiate.
My
again,
only
but-
point is that we have history, right, where it's been 9 years and no interchange has happened, and we've both been trying to work on it. So again, 100% of nothing is,
That's what's in the back of our mind.
yeah, and I'm just wondering, like, okay, so if the interchange gets up, and I think we're all gonna be a team trying to get this interchange up.
Correct. We
But
have every,
interchanges, Andrew, on average, would probably from construction to completion, probably give us a lead time of 27 to like 30 months. I mean, right now they're like
Mhm.
2 years, 2.5 years.
Yeah, 2 to 3 years for actual construction.
Completion of construction.
Yes.
Start and completion.
And relative to any progress over the last 9 years, we have worked with the developer, and we now have near shovel-ready plans. The only thing missing from the plans is the right-of-way certification.
And the reimbursement agreement with the city.
Yeah, and additional reimbursement agreements, which I think that'll come up later.
Mhm.
So those, so we do have right-of-way acquisition that we've completed, and we have completed the design on both sections. It's actually a second bridge as well associated with this project, because they also have to build a bridge over the
channel.
the channel at Avenue 50. And the way Caltrans has looked at the projects and approved the projects, they're actually distinctly tied to each other. So they won't even let you begin construction on the interchange unless you've already begun construction on the channel bridge. So they are, completely linked to each other. So it is actually two distinct. It's an entire corridor that has to be constructed, not just an interchange as well. They won't
But
allow an
that is-
interchange
that
that
is-
doesn't tie into anything.
sorry, that is not our understanding. So we need to certainly talk about that, and it maybe is.
Well,
better-
I can tell you that it's been my experience from Caltrans and others, that unless we have 2 entrances into that area, it's gonna be very difficult to start that project. I mean,
Yeah,
that's really the issue that I heard with.
Yeah, Caltrans has specifically said they will not permit an interchange unless you have the bridge over the canal as well. They won't allow an interchange to go in that dead ends. It doesn't have that connectivity. Because otherwise, it's dead ends in each direction.
I think that discussion with Caltrans happened before they knew. In fact, I'm not even sure they know now about the KPC project on the north side of the 10.
You see, that could be the case, and it goes back to my point of like, how are we thinking of these projects in its totality?
Yeah.
You know what I
Because
mean? So-
our understanding is that the 2 projects that we've just been talking about now, I'm talking about the transportation corridor projects, can be bifurcated. And but we certainly need to nail that down, because if we're now talking about getting funding for the, Avenue 50 extension, as well as the Interstate 10 interchange, that's a horse of a different color, as they say.
So, yeah, we're kind of slow rolling here. If Mayor, can we just ask John one point, I think to put in context once again. John, you mentioned certainty before from investors on the timeline. Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, I was just going to get into that. So, and Mayor, I think you're correct. Our experience is that an interchange of this, excuse me, magnitude would take, best case 24 months and more realistic case around 30 months. So with let's kind of dismiss this latest wrinkle and just assume that we can do the Interstate 10 interchange. We're not going to really know until construction starts that we have essentially a viable project. And for us to then go and do the infrastructure that's going to be required on site in terms of grading, I mean, we're going to be mass grading, millions of cubic yards of dirt. And we're talking about infrastructure costs that are going to be well into the hundreds of millions of dollars. And so in order to satisfy what staff is concerned about, that somehow nothing's going to happen, I think you said it before, if nothing happens, then no one's going to do it without the interchange. We've shown, I think, our good faith and that we're doing everything we can do to make the interchange happen. So when we ask for this 25-year initial term, and by the way, if and staff and us may be saying the same thing, if staff's saying it's additional 10 years from now, it's basically then a 25-year deal, is it not? We decided.
If we could keep on track, I think there's actually a lot less disagreement here than is being presented. Because you're asking for 25 years from an effective date. That's only 15 years from now anyway. And then you have a hard cap. We're actually being more generous because we're saying 10 years from the effective date of amendment number 2. So it's still 10 years from now. So that first review point is actually at the same location. And then we're saying we will have either administrative levels where if you've accomplished certain things at administrative level, you can get automatic extensions. So we're actually giving you even more time, but we're saying we want that tied to the effective date of amendment number 2, a 10-year period, which is actually pretty close to what you're asking for anyway, and then extensions. So I think there's a lot less disagreement here that's being presented because we're not.
So then why are we fighting?
We shouldn't be. We should be moving on. So
well,
we're gonna look at it again in 10 years after this.
Okay, next.
If there's
issue.
progress made, then you get extensions.
Yeah, and we obviously saw the first amendment to the development agreement tied everything to the effective date. So that's what we did. And maybe it was because we didn't want to disturb any kind of CEQA issues at all. But and forgive me for throwing out some acronyms that I'm sure everybody's familiar with in this room anyway. But we've tied everything back to the effective date. So if you're talking about 10 years from now, we're talking about 25 years from the effective date. That's pretty much the same initial term. Mm-hmm. And then the 3 5-year options we haven't disturbed. Our only comment on those were that we needed those options to be as long as we're not in default. And here's where we're going to get to the milestones, and that's coming up. But as long as we're not in default, those options are ministerial in nature, and they basically don't take council action, that they are, there's no discretionary approval, if you will, on the options.
As long as you're not in default.
Correct.
The magic words.
Yep.
Because if you're in default, then it comes back to council and then we can reassess.
Yes, and we're in agreement with that.
Mayor, I could continue on with this document. If
Please.
you like.
Please.
Yeah.
So just kind of keep in mind, and then let me, they are requesting also the possibility for an option of a 5-year extension after the initial 25 years to 30 years. which we weren't in agreement here.
That's fine. We win there.
Okay.
Well, wait a minute. I'm not sure that's correct. We were talking about an initial term of 25 years and then 3 5-year options. You're talking about an initial term of 10
years and
years
3 5-year
from the date of
The amendment.
the second approval of the second amendment plus 3 5-year options.
Yeah,
Yes.
I like that. I'm not gonna, let me count them. 25. I'm not gonna do a 40-year deal. It's a long time.
No, it goes 10, 5, 5.
We're going 10, 5, 5, 5. He's saying 25, 5, 5, 5.
The effective date.
It all depends on when you start.
That's where I'll
We're
get
saying exactly the same
Okay.
thing. We said effective date,
14.
we're kind of watching the wording, so there's no sequel.
So I understand, but
Saying the same thing.
I'm in terms of where we're at right now, 25 from it's basically 25 from this new day. When you amended, yeah, that's what we're
Yeah.
at.
Yeah.
We're on the same
Okay.
page.
Okay, this next item, I know we had a comment here. Automatic termination of agreement. The agreement shall automatically be terminated without any further action by either party or need to record any additional document upon occurrence of any of the following. Issuance of certificate of occupancy, upon issuance of the city of final certificate of occupancy. This didn't make sense, but I think we all agreed that should be removed.
The entire section, we all agree should be stricken.
Great. We got some comments. I know this comment came from Castelo, so I know he's over there. That this identification here of what's considered utility services also include water and sewer. I don't think there was any disagreement by any.
No, we're fine with that.
What is that? The parties acknowledge the agreement with us. The city should
That's-
support by laws reserving this authority. Yeah, everything. Oh, yeah, we're not gonna.
They can't install their own private systems.
We're gonna create it, everything.
This section here, so they're requesting that this section 12.3 be deleted and replaced with the following. So freezing of development impact fees. So development impact fees for this project, which are not being fully satisfied pursuant to section 14.2 of this agreement or otherwise credited pursuant to this agreement shall be frozen, both in category of fees charged and fee amount at the rates in effect as of the first Nexus study and resulting development impact fee schedule adopted by council after the effective date of the agreement and shall remain frozen for the first 50% of units first constructed at the project and the first 50% of the total allowable square footage of commercial space constructed at the project. Our comment was that this should exclude water and sewer fees. And after study is complete, locking in development impact fee for next 10 years. And I know we got that comment from Castelo. So if you have any questions about that, I'm sure he'd be able to speak to it.
Well, from the developer side, the reason why you do a development agreement is for this very purpose. There's really not a whole lot on the table for the developer in a development agreement that is more important than locking in fees. That's why we do DAs. And our thinking was that the Lightstone deal basically locked in fees. Correct me if I'm wrong, staff, but that locked in fees from the effective date. There wasn't an amendment required for a new Nexus study or anything else. And so we wanted the same benefit that was part of the original development agreement.
And my only comment here was to exclude water and sewer, just because,
Sorry, go ahead.
just because, if nothing happens for this project in 10, 15 years, 20 years, we might make millions of dollars of investment into the system that eventually the project will connect to. And so for us to, the impact fee for water or sewer is meant for projects to pay for their shared portion of the system that they're using that we've invested into. And so if in the next 10 years, 15 years, we invest another, call it $15 million worth of infrastructure, all of a sudden that raises the impact fee by $15 million, right? That's spread over a unit cost. So it's not fair for us to lock in those rates at a cost of what it would take for you to purchase into the system now, and then somehow say that's the price 15 years later when we've invested another $15 million into the system. And so all I'm saying is you could, aside from our department, if another department is okay with doing that, I'm saying exclude water and sewer just because you can't lock in the rates for that.
And I would imagine that development agreements don't happen with like MWD. They don't happen with, you know, Desert Water, Coachella Valley. I mean, it's just, hey, this is the system cost and you pay in.
Yeah, I that's been my experience. I think you have the uniqueness here that not only are you acting as a land management agency, but you're also a utility. And so I would think that you have the flexibility of locking in fees related to land management, but as it relates to utilities, you know, those are fixed costs that you're actually making during a period of time. And so in the next 10, 15 years, we might drill another, you know, 5 wells, and the cost of purchasing it to the system is that much more expensive.
Sure.
And we've had some internal discussions on this one, and we are prepared to say that if we exclude water and sewer from those frozen fees and leave our suggested language in place, that we would be okay with that.
Okay, so moving on then to the next section, if there's no other questions on the previous one.
And
Construction milestones. So on this one, we talked a little bit about it, but they're requesting, in order to preserve and maintain provisions of this agreement, the landowner must commence construction on the project within 7 years from completion of the Interstate 10 interchange. So staff did not agree to that. That was our feedback, that it shouldn't be tied to the interchange. That that it should be that the interchange is started within 5 years of the agreement, and use 10 years as a time frame for commencement of construction.
But how do we access it if we don't have an interchange?
Exactly.
You can do it at Avenue 50 and at 52. You can put a loop in. You can
Well,
do-
but that's, and we had this discussion when we got together with staff. It's just, it sounds good, but it's just not realistic from a market standpoint. No one is going to, I mean, there are going to be a lot of merchant builders involved in this project. Lennar is not going to go into a secondary access. We're not going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in transportation, circulation infrastructure and grading and everything else, utilizing a secondary access as a primary access.
our primary concern from staff's perspective on this is that there's no effective date on when the interchange needs to change. So starting everything from 7 years after the completion of the interchange, technically they wouldn't be in default if they started construction in 9.9 years and it took them 6 years to build then interchange, and then they still have another 7 years after that before they even have to start building a house. So it's not defined enough unless you have a very clear starting date and have a clear indication on when we're actually going to start homes. So it's just too open-ended the way it's written. I don't think staff is in disagreement that the interchange is crucial to the project, and obviously you have to have the interchange started before housing happens. We don't disagree with that fact. We just disagree with the wording here being too open-ended. We need to lock that down a little bit better.
What is your suggestion?
I believe Gabriel had already mentioned since the first term is 10 years from the effective date, saying like the interchange would start within 5 years and housing would start within 5 years of commencement of the interchange rather than completion of the interchange. That means that you have to have started the interchange and you have to have started housing in order to be in compliance with that first 10-year term. So if our term's going to be 10 years, let's make the housing and the interchange fit within that 10-year time frame.
I'm just saying hypothetically, if the interchange just get going, I would imagine that's kind of like an economic indicator to KPC. You should get going too.
Absolutely, guys. Again, I kind of take you back to the market realities that we deal with. We're not, Dr. Chaudhry is not spending tens of millions of dollars to acquire the La Entrada project and just kind of twiddle his thumbs, waiting for the clock to expire after the interchange is built. We have every incentive possible to start as soon as possible. When we see dirt moving for that interchange, we're doing all sorts of things. So maybe it's just a fear factor on the part of staff that we're not properly incentivized to move quickly on this. But again, we're borrowing money from banks and we're floating bonds and we're doing things that essentially encumber the property and encumber our financial statements to very large sums of money. And we just need a certainty factor so that we know that we're not going to be in default. And that's why we've asked for the extra time.
And I think we trust you and staff, I guess, doesn't want to make it all the way open-ended. How can we work on like a kicker there? Like if they get started and we see that it started and the house goes up,
Yeah,
we give them more time.
Maybe
Or
I could see, we don't know what the economy is going to be like also in that time. And we don't control our destiny with the interchange. But if the interchange is starting, maybe instead of 7 years, we can look at a reduction of 7 years somehow. These are things that I think we're willing to consider.
And I think that's where we kind of left it. We were going to have you fashion some additional language because we didn't like it being open-ended. That was all. We just needed to make sure that there was a time frame to where this thing starts.
okay.
Understood. And there's a lot of moving parts here, so that they all kind of have to work together. And now we're gonna jump into the milestones, more of the details of the milestones.
But John,
So-
it's fine. Can we just finalize that part right there? Can you give me?
Sure.
Do you have a suggested language other than 7 years?
Well, if in fact whether we want to trigger it from the commencement of the interchange, I certainly would be willing to take back to our team, instead of 7 years, 5 years.
5 years from commencement.
Yes.
Yeah, that seems much more reasonable. So that's exactly what we were talking about. And we all agree that if you're going to invest in that bridge, you're going to immediately be investing into commercial and housing as well. So there shouldn't be any reason why that would be a disagreement. But that way it's just so open-ended at our end where someone can just go belly up and walk away and leave us with dead-end infrastructure.
Well, certainly that doesn't make sense to us at all. So
Okay.
from an incentive standpoint, we have no incentive to do that. And I would
5 years from
mention that,
commencement.
yeah, 5 years from commencement. Let's put that on the table. I would like to mention that with Mr. Perez's presentation, these were minimums that when we talk about the numbers of commercial square footage and some of these other numbers, these were minimums that we were talking about. If there is room for this, I mean, we don't control the commercial marketplace. And as you know, rooftops dictate commercial square footage. Other things drive hotel rooms. So if the demand is there, we're going to build as much as we can build, or make sure that our partners build as much as they can build. But I just wanted to mention that the numbers we're talking about are minimum numbers.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Gabe, go ahead and go down.
It
to
sounds
the-
like there's enough for us to have further discussion on this, from this meeting on this. So moving on to, the next one. This is where we talk about certificate of occupancy, where units are constructed. And, one of the comments that we had with respect to commercial and retail is that, a fiscal study needs to be completed for the KPC project, to provide adequate feedback if this timing made sense. Bill, I don't know if you want to add anything to that point.
It's just what we talked about earlier. The fiscal analysis is going to drive it because ultimately they're going to look for a reduction in the CFD that we charge for public safety. So the timing of those, the commercial and the hotel coming online is going to be critical because we have to have a point where we know population is going to ramp up. We're not going to have a lot of police coverage up there. We could probably have a portable trailer up there with a squad for fire. We don't have to have a full station and all that. So we'll grow into it, which will be part of the analysis. But as far as other revenues ramping up, sales tax, TOT, property tax, things like that, we need to make sure that I do not reduce the CFD to the point where we're paying out of the general fund from the western part of the city to pay for stuff going on in the eastern part. So that will be worked out through the fiscal study, because the fiscal study is going to let us know what needs to be there. Because obviously if the numbers are too low based upon 50,000 of square foot of commercial, we're not going to be able to do that. And
Yeah,
the
we're
fee is
not.
going to stay high. So it will work itself out. So that's something the fiscal analysis is going to have to determine. So that will have to come back to the council. I believe David Tosick is the ones working on that. I've worked with them before and Hemet.
Yeah, we're
when-
working
yeah.
with David on.
So yeah, so they're a great group. We will I hope have a draft of their analysis within like the next 2 weeks or so.
That's fine. And then just just so that council member Vita knows, I mean, the last Tosic study was actually done by Tosic and a guy by the name of Bruce Standy, kind of identified the minimum housing at about 450,000 of just to break even back in the day. And this was like 10 years ago. And I imagine it's probably a little bit higher to kind of pay for their own. So I think that's just it's one of the things that we haven't really done a great job in this city about talking about land use and economics of land use and how land can pay for itself, or land use should be able to pay for itself. And I think we, as development comes in, we really need to be thorough. Because the other side of it is that I believe there could be a conversation citywide about just how we treat, or how much taxes we actually levy at every level. So it's something that I think, we just need to be really mindful of. And at the end of the day, I think our goal is to have a city that's well run and has the ample resources to pay for good amenities. So I like that. In fact,
Absolutely. And we've known David Tauzik for a long time, and he's done other projects with us. And David, as far as I'm concerned, is probably the guru of municipal finance and in the entire state of California. So we'll have something, I think, that is credible and reliable. And as Bill said, it will kind of define itself almost. So we're on that, and we're in agreement with staff as to the approach.
that's
Mayor-
yeah, when that comes back, it'd be good that either the city council or as a whole, or if it comes through here, that we get kind of a debrief on just a financial analysis.
Sure.
I think the entire city council should
Yeah,
be
they should know.
able to get a debrief.
Absolutely.
Gabriel.
So Mayor, just moving on to the hotels, as the previous slideshow showed that the same time frame for construction of the hotel is reduced from the 140 hotel rooms to 60. But again, we mentioned we'll need to review the fiscal study that's prepared for KPC. Moving on to the affordable housing, we kind of mentioned that. Just the feeling is that we felt that the affordable housing under the first phase of the construction, the amount of constructing affordable units would be too minimal. The total affordable housing is the same, but we thought it was too much on the focused on the back end for affordable housing. So, you know, we were curious to see if there was any feedback on that from the subcommittee.
Just on average, Gabriel, we've been averaging about 108 units of affordable housing. And you know what, I would like to stipulate that what we're considering affordable housing is not workforce housing here. It's actually low mod, very low, like affordable housing. Not,
It's not subsidized.
no, it is subsidized
It is.
housing. Yeah. And if it is subsidized, then your criteria of how we're gonna do this, it makes sense. Because the subsidized project would need to go out for subsidies and try to get a funding pie to actually put it together. If we're not talking about subsidized, if we're talking about like, and what does workforce housing really mean? Like what, like, nobody's defined that yet. I don't care what city you're in. I mean, when I think affordable housing, I'm not thinking workforce housing, I'm thinking subsidized housing, what we're building down the street here. And
Mayor,
yeah,
this would be affordable housing that's subsidized housing, so it's not something that's other than subsidized housing.
okay, so then
Covenant
if that's the
restricted.
case, then the way they're proposing it makes sense, because based off of how we're getting grants, I don't see how we're gonna get a subsidy large enough to build 500 units in one and call it in 3 years. I mean, Selena, you would know better how we getting our grants.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a, I think like a safe number, because I did see that when Gabriel pulled it up and I thought, okay, 100 sounds normal. You know, usually an affordable developer will propose 60 to 100 units. So that's 100 is pretty good to make the project pencil out.
Per up to, we'll do like a 10-year build. And I'd like to, don't concentrate it, put them next to parks, put them next to schools, put them next to, you know, shopping centers, et cetera, you know, allow an opportunity to integrate those communities and actually have a better quality of life. And there could be ways, for example, I know there's a lot of talk about, you know, going up here and where some of those units can be affordable. And there's great examples, you know, of affordable units in different taller buildings. So that's my deal. But in terms of just being realistic, I mean, this city has led the charge right now on building affordable housing within the last 7 years. And on average, we're about, I don't know, the low of 70, and then we go to a high of what, 108 that we just got in. Or no, what did we do at Dolores Huerta? We did 152, right?
152,
152. That's been our high.
that's been our high. Originally 52 and then it was 100, right? So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the 100 range is a realistic range from an efficiency standpoint. This is not our bailiwick. We would, of course, reach out to companies that specialize in this. We've had some preliminary conversations with them. We feel as though that these are, again, are minimums, right? So we may have somebody that wants to do 120 units, depending on the funding, but to do anything more than 100 in the early stages, I think we don't want to make promises we can't keep.
And I will say something, and maybe staff may disagree or people may disagree. And it's taken me a minute cruising through the Coachella Valley and like observing some of these projects. We could get into a conversation in the city about affordable housing also being like mobile homes.
Mhm.
And we haven't done that in the city. Typically what we've done is apartments and single family. I go to Palm Desert Greens not too long ago. Got beat up there, but I went anyways. I went and there was very high quality, like mobile home, affordable housing. Now, the caveat there is that the people own those mobile homes. And but the land is owned by the property, or a property owner. I wouldn't like put it past us in terms of like thinking about that here. I mean, it's not a bad idea. It's different. It's providing housing people can afford at all levels. Just throwing that out there. It's something that we can chew on. We haven't done it. We used to do it in the city. I mean, way back in the day. I mean, but
Much more advanced too.
well, there has to be a lot
2
more.
by 6 construction.
Well, the issue is going to be the CCNRs and how we really put a lot of
Well, remember, Mayor,
enforcement ability.
we do have an existing specific plan document, and I think if Ron Goldman were here, he would be chirping in and saying, we don't want to trigger a specific plan amendment. I would imagine our design standards in our specific plan document, I'm gonna guess, I don't have it memorized, and I'm talking about for La Entrada. I would doubt that it includes a modular or mobile home, but anyway, that would just be my
I don't
one
remember. I don't
caveat.
remember that it did. Maybe that's just me talking about housing type. It didn't then. So then because we can't trip, CEQA, then there goes
Right.
that.
Exactly.
Mayor, just moving on the affordable housing topic, they identified a term of 30 years for affordable housing, but usually it's 50, I think it's 50, right?
55.
55 years. So
Is
we just commented on
again,
that.
Yeah, and I think we said that's by statute now, or
That
is
is by
that?
statute.
Yeah, okay, so we're fine with that.
So next, development agreement fee. So we had mentioned that in the slideshow. So on here, they're saying that for the second amendment, it would be a one-time fee of $2,500 instead of the 2% fee tied to the building valuation. I don't know what that total cost would be for this project, and but it could be significant if you think about housing construction and what the valuation would be for a single residential unit. So 2% of that multiplied by the number of units that are anticipated for this project, that would be considerable compared to the $2,500 development agreement fee. And so we definitely want some feedback from the Economic Development Subcommittee
How much
on
we
that.
lose?
If that would be something agreeable to, then this is something that applicants looking to propose. Staff doesn't have any major objections to this, but we understand that fee that we initially anticipated with the development agreement would be substantial.
And Mayor, if I may, from the developer standpoint, I think what we did is basically just reverted to the original language in the development agreement, if I'm not mistaken, which made no mention of that continuous fee. It's a very, in my opinion, poorly worded paragraph that's in the First Amendment. Our thought was we needed something from a contractual consideration standpoint. And I think that was the intent of the original development agreement paragraph regarding a development fee. So we're just reverting back to what was agreed to originally.
That's 2,500 a home. That's what I understand.
I don't, well.
No, that's just 2,500, just one time that's proposed.
So that's one time 2,500, but not for home. But then what's the 2%? What was that based off of?
That would be building valuation tied to each permit. So
Tied to what, 7,800 units? 7,800, is that what the original amount? So if the project had a valuation of, I don't know, call it
200,000 a unit.
no, that's not gonna do that.
Well, over the life of the project, I think you're going to hit that average, probably even a little more than that, quite honestly.
So you're going from 1 billion to 2,500 bucks?
I thought that we were talking about $2,500 a unit. is what we-
No,
The
No.
one time.
no.
Oh, well, yeah, Steph's not completely agreeing with that one, but
We're not even sure where this came from
And
because
what are we measuring the 2% of? What's the original? In consideration entering into the Second Amendment, owner has paid the city a one-time fee of oh no, but the language before was 2% of what are we evaluating? Of
Isn't,
the development agreement?
isn't
Like,
the
what did it
development
cost?
agreement fee just the fee that they pay for us to process the development
Correct.
agreement?
Exactly,
Which have already paid, because we've already gone through all the environmental, we've already gone through most of the.
exactly, exactly.
They're proposing a fee to do an amendment,
Of the development agreement? Maybe
which,
that's what it was. It was,
which
you guys had already-
$2,500 isn't even covering our staff time in this meeting, so that number's still probably too low, but.
Yeah,
And we're fine with whatever it is to have city attorney
There's-
or whomever,
Yeah,
or
there's
staff.
gonna be attorney fees, so it would,
Yeah, that we get that.
can you guys look
but
at
there-
that?
No, come
guys-
up with a number.
You guys can look at
Mhm.
it.
Yes.
Next,
Okay, moving on. It's like no agreement, no disagreement there. So this is that transfer fee we were talking about. So on here it says the development agreement is amended so that it says a no sale transfer assignment of any right or interest under this agreement shall be made unless made together with the sale, transfer, or assignment of all or part of the property, provided however landowner may assign its rights and interests here under to an affiliate of landowner without the need for a sale, transfer, assignment of all or part of the property. And so let me just go back to this real quick. So how that kind of compares to, so there would be an existing development agreement would assume fees, transfer fees under these three different scenarios, but what's proposed is that there would be no transfer fees. So that's what this would mean.
And we didn't understand the nexus of that to begin with. That really doesn't impact the city. If the city wants to approve the new developer or somehow, get bonding information or something like that, we're fine, along the lines of what we just talked about with the development agreement fee. We would certainly be willing to pay whatever retainer or hourly rate or however you guys want to do a third party agreement. But this made absolutely no sense to us because there's just no nexus to the city and impact to the city for this particular fee.
And Mayor, when we talked about this internally as staff doesn't have any major objections to removing this transfer fee. But it is a fee that was anticipated with the existing development agreement. So we'd like your feedback.
if it doesn't make sense, or we're okay with removing it then. Okay, next fee, or next,
There's a point here where it says cooperation in the event of a legal challenge. So in the event of legal challenge instituted by a third party, then here the city would need to cooperate in defending the action, including with the costs and expenses with that legal action. And so we believe usually for projects that gets incurred by the applicant. The applicant's identifying the city when those legal challenges happen.
And if I may, Mr. Perez, let me kind of cut to the chase on that one. We're in agreement with staff. We understand the indemnification process. The only thing that we might want to have as an option, if we're essentially indemnifying the city and paying for whatever lawyers to defend the city and to defend us, we would just like the right to choose counsel. But that's it. We're in agreement with staff and the concept of indemnification. We understand.
that works.
And there's some indemnification language that the city attorney will need to review later. And let's see, that's really it here.
One thing we need to talk about, and Bill brought it up, was the fire station. And that's back in section,
Oh, I might have missed that. Here we go.
yeah, section, item 21, section 13.10.
Yeah. Sorry, I missed that. So here it identifies that the construction costs So let me read the whole thing. Upon issuance of the first building permit, the master developer shall provide a bond to the city sufficient to secure construction of the permanent fire station within the project at a time as required by the fire department. The amount of the bond shall be determined based on the cost for a permanent facility as outlined in the then current city's fee nexus study, but shall not exceed the amount of $2 million. Now, staff had a concern about there being a cap of $2 million because we don't even think that would be close to enough to complete the construction of a fire station. We're actually having experiences with just rehabilitating an existing fire station. So we think
Stations are
that-
$15 million right now.
Yeah.
So,
That's a brand
and-
new one. The county's got two of them. I think they're like 17 million
I think
bucks.
we're gonna talk about building a mobile home.
Well,
And that's just a station. You still need staffing and
Yeah, well, no, I mean.
staffing and
but
trucks
just
and everything.
Keep in mind though, that I mean, well, these are development impact fees, right? And so. Or,
Right. But what we talked about the rehab of the fire station. It's going to be whatever the fire station costs, plus they're going to get a credit against the fees that they would pay. And we're not going to, they're going to pay the fees across all of the homes.
yeah,
So what they pay is going to exceed what the cost of the building is going to actually be ultimately at build out.
Yeah.
Because at some point there'll have to be a fire station on the south side and on the north side.
no, there
So,
had to be like 3 fire stations, one on the south side.
there could be,
There
or
could be
you-
like 3 or 4.
yeah. So anyhow, we talked about the phasing and how they could put up a temporary station. They did it in Temecula, you know, and they were building the Red Hawk area when it was still county. They put up a temp station. They were running a squad out of there and engines could run from, you know, station 79 here. Until a certain benchmark was met where, you know, there are so many homes up there and then there has to be a station. At that point would require them to put the station in place, but they would bond for the station as what would happen.
That
with
works
the-
for me.
Okay.
So Mayor, so the language that we have here is that there would be a fully equipped station, shall be constructed before the commencement of phase 3. So there's a construction, but also equipment associated with the station.
Yeah,
And-
phase 3, you would have what, 4,000 houses up there? What's
Yeah, and we're okay with the timing and the milestones and the triggers on that. Our intent in capping it was just to de-incentivize, and we understand you're a county contract city. You know, we didn't want a Taj Mahal. We didn't want to just give the appearance that we're just gonna, you know, write a blank check. I mean, what if they want to build a $20 million fire station? So
Oh, that's not gonna, I mean,
we
I
just.
tell you
need
what, you
something-
could go argue this point with the chief and whatever he says, we'll agree to. But like, I think like there, we're gonna want what everybody else gets and we haven't done anything to Taj Mahal here.
Yeah,
No,
it needs,
no,
it needs to be a
I'm just
fully equipped
suggesting
operational
was-
fire station, not $2
Yeah,
million is a
it
drop
was
in the
just-
bucket. That doesn't
No.
even provide for anything. That doesn't even buy a single truck.
No. No.
That's half
It
of a
was-
truck.
Yeah, well, we have to certainly define what the capital cost is and what we're responsible for. We just thought that was a little too open-ended. We're working on some language that I think tightens things up a bit, and we understand the concept. As long as we can maybe put in that is typical for the Coachella Valley area with other cities that are contract cities, you know, we'll propose some language that just tightens this up a little. I think we understand that the $2 million is not a realistic number, but we just wanted to come up with some kind of a cap, just so you know that it's a concern of ours and we'll work through this. I'm not too worried about how we solve this issue.
Mayor, I think that covers all the points, but I think the last thing I want to mention is that, you know, we're covering changes that the developer is requesting to the development agreement. This is an exchange between the city and the developer. But, you know, if there's any feedback that the committee has on this, right, is there something that the committee wants to see in the development agreement, you know, because of this change, right? We saw the first one led to the increase in affordable housing. I think that was something the city council requested at the time. So, you know, it is definitely open up to the city council to consider what they want as part of the development agreement amendment. And so I just want to make sure that you're aware of that as well.
Yeah, that's a great That's a great, just question and I think it's important and I hope, and I know Dr. Chaudhry, you know, he wants to make sure that all his communities have a great quality of life after they're built out. I've seen what he's done. And on that note, right, you know, communities are more than just, you know, roads and parks and you know, their libraries, their parks, their the fire stations, their businesses. But there has to be like you know, there are some good examples. Palm Desert, for example, they've really worked to build like a cultural facility. You know, it came in the McCallum Theater, like back in the day but they work with the state and they work with the county, they work with, you know, with others to kind of, you know, foundation, etc. COD. No, it's actually on state property, McCallum Theater. So I think that like not state property. It's a crazy old deal. So on that note, I mean, you know, the other that's something to consider. I know my colleague to the right of me, she's passionate about healthcare, you know, and then you had people back in the day like Gene Benson back in the day that like ushered in you know, a healthcare or a childcare facilities, and I'm just throwing that out there right now to really kind of think about, you know, if we're going to have 17,000, you know, homes and 54,000 new residents, you know, what is a good quality of life look like in its totality? And I think
Sorry,
that's,
Mr. Mayor. Go
I
ahead.
think that's important. I think that's important that we think about that, like from a civic standpoint, from a childcare standpoint. You know, obviously you know, I know a little bit about the other specific plan and just my small conversations I've had. You know, that's more of a medical kind of facility that they're talking about. But I think it's just important that like, how can this be a complement to that? That's all. I don't know. That's Stephanie. I don't.
Yeah, I think specifically for this project, as the mayor mentioned, you know, there's going to be a lot new residents. And so maybe not just like a childcare facility, but also focusing more on early childhood education. So there are different agencies, organizations that you could even partner with that would be able to make that happen. But yes, childcare is incredibly important. I think a lot of people in the city know that, and we have a lot of family childcare centers. But I think focusing more on early childhood education, you're going to have a lot more residents there. You have affordable housing. It's going to be important that they also have access to that, especially since they're really far away from what we have on this side of the city. So if you're already providing and planning for those amenities, I think it'd be also in the best interest of the city to really move forward with something like that. So early childhood education would be something that I would suggest.
All right, well, Dr. Chaudhry is a huge proponent of education. He has a medical school that he's actually currently visiting in Kolkata, India. Those of you that know Dr. Chaudhry know that he is not your typical developer, that this is a very special project for him. It's a legacy project for him. We have some upcoming surprises that I think the city will be thrilled to hear about. So what you're suggesting, and of course with Dr. Chaudhry's medical background and healthcare background, this is his forte. So I don't see anything there that we couldn't incorporate. And we would want to incorporate those things at the earliest possible time. So we're completely in alignment with your thinking.
Yeah, and the other thing too, you know, you got Elon Musk that's proposing his own little Texas city over there and kind of off grid, and just I think it's important that we really think about the future and not so, you know, and how this community is going to be or potentially could be
you know, of really leading the innovation and kind of a new Coachella Valley. And
We're,
also
we're,
a younger Coachella Valley.
we're absolutely, one of the things you'll hear Dr. Chaudhry say is the last thing he wants to do is a bunch of brown boxes. And he is in total agreement about having a walkable community, a you know, a very smart community, a high-tech community. I mean, the jobs to housing balance on this project, I think, will be better than any major project in the Coachella Valley, maybe even in Riverside County. So we're not wanting to do your typical specific plan. This is something very special, and everything that you've asked about, we're totally in agreement and moving forward from a design standpoint and implementing it again as soon as we possibly can.
And then just the other thing for me is also thinking about, you know, our city and who's moving back. We have a lot of young professionals in the city and in surrounding areas. So also even considering, we saw a shift and a transition when it comes to, you know, after COVID-19, a lot of folks were working now from home. So maybe even thinking of a facility or something where young professionals who are living in that area can work from home, maybe can have like a workspace. I'm just thinking, we have young professionals network within the city, and that's something that really comes up a lot, is a lot of them are still working from home. They've even transitioned to positions where now they're working from home. And so I think considering that and really thinking of how we can take advantage of that as well and provide something for them. I know that that's probably not something that's going to change. A lot of people are still, you know, companies, organizations, even government, they're still allowing and really budgeting for positions that are not so much, you know, having them go in person, but, you know, they're doing that telework. And so just something to consider. I think that would be, you know, important that you incorporate too.
Absolutely. All the infrastructure will be there to do that. We're in total agreement.
Well, one thing before we want to go on record, staff has been doing a lot of work on this La Entrada, especially Andrew with design and environmental work. We did acquire the property to go over the canal through eminent domain, and that still needs to be paid out by Lightstone. So whoever ends up owning La Entrada will need to make the city whole before we move any development agreement forward. So I just want to make sure that's on the record.
And this is, thank you. This is something that has come up from a kind of a tangent standpoint. Is there any kind of document that, because we're not seeing anything on a title report, we would be very interested in seeing if the city has anything as an agreement with Lightstone. In our due diligence materials, we've not run across this item. So is there an accounting? Is there an agreement? Is there anything that you can provide to us that helps us deal with this with Lightstone?
Yeah, there's a cost share agreement that has already been provided multiple times. And it showed the all the different costs for the development of the bridge and the canal and the responsibilities of the parties towards that.
No, he's talking specifically about the 2.4 million.
Yes, that was all done with our attorneys, and we have title to those properties, so we can provide all the documentation for that. And that was part of the agreement that we had with Lightstone. And that was.
I haven't seen, John, have you seen that where they have to reimburse that?
I have not, Stan. I've heard a little bit about it. I've been focusing on other things, as you know, but obviously it's something that needs to be nailed down. And
you can check with Jonathan Hoy too, with CVAC documents, etc. And Tom Kirkwood might have a.
John, I gave you a copy of the cooperative agreement that when you came in, that document has those numbers, and the one with the bridge that said to be determined, and now we know those costs, so we would have to amend that agreement.
that was an agreement that was signed by
Lightstone.
Terry
Yeah.
Manley.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and Stan, do you have that agreement?
Yeah, we
Yes.
have the cost share, but I didn't see where specifically where they have to reimburse the 2.4.
All right, well, just.
Yeah.
Stan, make sure you've got everything that the city has, and if we've already got it, then please send it my way at your earliest possible time.
Be kind
I
of cool.
appreciate you bringing it up.
Big Coachella sign up there, like the Hollywood sign, just look like Coachella. On top.
Yeah.
Hmm. That was gonna be a big art project we were gonna do up there on the top. Coachella.
And lights.
Yep. All right, well, that was easy. It doesn't take us multiple meetings now. We can,
Yeah.
just took us a long meeting. All right, well, next presentation.
Yeah, I think, if I.
I think
can
you're done.
suggest-
Good. I think you get out of here, well, you're ahead. You know, just.
If I, yeah,
No.
Mayor, if I can suggest that we can take our comments today and do an amended second amendment. When would we like your city attorney to become involved?
We're gonna need for the fiscal study to be done. There's a lot of work that's gotta be done there. So the sooner I get the information from David Tosick, we're gonna have to meet and talk about that and then work on those other fiscal, things, the commercial development, the TOT, and then we need to address what's gonna happen with the CFD fee as well. That's something we'll want to put into that because you'll want to protect yourself as well.
Yes. All right. Well, I'll check in with David tomorrow, as a matter of fact, and I'll circle back with you, Bill, and give you an idea of when you could be expecting that.
Perfect. Thank you, John.
Yeah, I think it's.
All right, well, with that, we'll move on to the next presentation. Mobius.
Wait, bathroom break?
Oh, yeah, quick bathroom break.
Mayor, thank you again, and thank you, staff. I'm going to sign off and look forward to having further discussions.
Oh, you're welcome.
Great.
Jason has it. He'll pull it up. Okay.
All right, thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Thank you. Stan.
We're taking a break, right?
Yeah. Mr. Deslan.
Okay, so thank you very much for your time, Mayor, Councilwoman, team here. So two things on the agenda, so I assume I get an hour 45 as well, just for parity's sake. Okay, so again, thank you again for your time. I'm here to ask for your support for the Mobius conference, specifically program that we're having here in Coachella. So just kind of a little bit of a background. We started this program, this conference about 4 years ago with the purpose of trying to have a little bit more of a give back to the community during the festival. So obviously, we're about to enter festival season, tons of people come into town, a lot of tourism money, a lot of people with really great ideas, heads of industry. What we wanted to do is be able to coalesce this group, people that are in town, combine them with locals to be able to have, discussions on relevant topics, issues that affect us here locally, which quite frankly, usually affect regionally, state, country in the world. So we combine that by the Mobius kind of, if you know a Mobius strip, you know, it's kind of like a infinity looking thing that in a sense, we're all going in the same direction and we all together end up in the same place. So we make sure that we are combining the youth, that we are combining arts and culture with policymakers, with the nonprofit community, again, you know, transgenerational, making sure that everyone is in the same room having these discussions. We're trying to expand the tent of, you know, who is invited to these conversations. So basically, in different locations throughout the Coachella Valley, we have different programming, and you know, different formats. Some are speeches, some are panels, some are presentations, some are video production stuff. But you know, this year we're about to unveil who our speakers are next week. But we're asking for support for a particular program here in the city of Coachella. So,
Councilmember, have you taken a look at the proposal?
Hmm?
Have you taken a look at the proposal on the agenda?
That they submitted. Yeah, but I'm gonna
You want to hear the whole?
hear everything, yeah.
can I advance it?
But thank you, sir.
Trying to get it moving. Get us out of here.
Cool. So as I mentioned, this conference is between week 1 and week 2 of Coachella. Again, taking advantage of people being in town. A lot of media attention in the city or in the region in the Coachella Valley. So we're trying to get those people to these particular programs. You know, so again, students and youth are a major part of what we're trying to accomplish in terms of making sure that they're part of the conversation. These are pictures from past years. In addition, you know, this is policymakers, arts, culture. So, you know, in addition of having local leadership, we also invite leadership from throughout the country to take part, and so that they can have these conversations. This is from last year's conference that it was held at Carrion Park in the city of Indio. Costello, as you are well aware of, and this is councilwoman from New York City, the borough of Brooklyn. So what we are doing is calling the empowerment session. We have partnered with Coachella Valley Unified School District to make sure their students are here. We've also partnered with GB Black. So that's Golden Voice Black. It's a group of employees that came together after the George Floyd murder to organize. And basically what they do is in the cities that they work in, they try and, you know, kind of impact the community that they're serving. So they're doing that by coming to Coachella. They're actually going to run their own panel discussion on inclusion in arts and entertainment. And this is the program that we are asking for support of. It will be held at the Coachella Container Park from 10 to 1 p.m. on Wednesday, April 19th. So we're going to have speakers, we're going to have, you know, some entertainment, we're going to feed students. Basically, it's discussions, it's presentations, and then everyone breaks bread together. You know, we're expecting students from throughout the Coachella Valley. We're, you know, in talks with La Quinta High School, Palm Springs High School. So there's a San Unified, some Desert Hot Springs kids as well. And obviously the biggest contingency would be from East Side students. And that is our presentation in a nutshell. Happy to answer any question that you have. We were asking for $2,500 sponsorship.
Thank you for your presentation. And the $2,500 sponsorship, can you briefly say what that would go towards?
It's mainly going to go for food for, you know, the students. So we're expecting about 80 students. So some food, some logistical stuff. We have sponsorships that are allowing the larger production, get our speakers out here, travel, housing, all that kind of stuff. So we're just asking for some support to be actually enhance the experience for these students.
And so with the students, are you providing transportation or the students are just, you know, they'll know the location of
That's
the
part of the
place?
partnership with the school district.
school, okay.
They're going to send a bus.
Their bus. Okay, thank you.
Aye. Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I think this is a great use of the community-based grant that we have, $2,500. It's to help 80, students from Coachella Valley High School. That's
Mhm.
why we developed that program. That grant program, by the way, wasn't just for kids. It was for little scholarships and everything else. So I think this is great. Good job. Thank you for finally bringing it to Coachella.
Well, if the mayor remembers,
Oh my.
if the mayor remembers, he was, presented with the first year's opportunity.
Yeah.
And it,
Had a
you know,
different
we
grant.
unfortunately had to move it to Indio, but, we're hoping to, come back to Coachella and kind of restart here.
There was some things that previous councils wanted to move away from, and others that wanted to do certain things. One of them was this one. The other one was, we used to have a really cool movie festival, and then some council members kind of got rid of that too. And it was like, okay, well, whatever, we'll move on, but you're back. Good. Welcome.
Appreciate the support, and obviously, invitations to the event are forthcoming. Again, it's meant to, bring everyone to the table to have, these discussions. So we're grateful for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, new business calendar, council member, no new business, public comments. I want to add some things on the new business calendar, presentations, approved agenda, new business. That'll be us right there. Is there anything you want to add, council member, to this committee to review?
I guess the only thing I would ask is, I know that we had a presentation from the chamber a couple of meetings ago, and there was discussion about perhaps the chamber being able to have access to the individual that takes care of business licenses and knowing which new businesses are coming forward and having that connection with them maybe quarterly, being able to have meetings. So I'd like to maybe add that to the agenda. And then for us to be getting those updates as well, like for us to know what new businesses are coming to the city or who has tried getting a business license, just so that we're aware and we know that, we are actively working with the chamber to ensure that, we're providing resources and anything that we can to any new business licenses.
Thank you. Staff has sent that information that was requested, and so we have it on agenda to provide a quarterly update in conjunction with the chamber.
Okay,
Thank you.
any
I think I'm okay for now.
All right, I got a couple of things I want to try to work on as kind of moving the economic development in the city. Building off of what the councilwoman said, and I think the success that we had with the chamber, in which we heard back through the chamber from the businesses, but I think we need follow-up, and I'd like to propose that we do, 3 business listening sessions, either here, and that we flyer those businesses and bring them in here to really start talking about and thinking about what they need, from permitting, from fees, from, public safety issues. Like, I think it's important that we do 3 little listening sessions. We can have one, maybe this committee, Brown Act Committee, we can have a little session and we bring in those businesses and we host 3 of them, and figure out a schedule for it throughout the year. I want to look at a small business development plan. Is Gabriel on the line, Perez? And it's not so much what we traditionally do, but there's a,
Oh, he's here.
oh, Gabriel, good.
Wow, that was fast.
I want to look at a small, I'm trying to call it like a small development plan for the city of Coachella, where we're not looking at like corporate builders or big builders, but we're looking at mom and pop builders that want to expand their base, expand their footprint. So for example, Perez Market out there in Coachelita, the Samara Valdez and her mom and Lupita, they want to build, they want to go up, they want to build a couple of different facilities, and they asked, what can the city do for you? And I said,
Sure, understand.
well, we'll understand. They said, what can the city do for you? And I said, well, let's think about that, you know. One of the things that obviously people need help on is pre-development work.
Mhm.
And so what does pre-development work look like? It looks like, you know, maybe assisting and with professional expertise so that they can submit their documents. So maybe it's certain contractors, certain architects that are not gonna, you know, gouge them and, you know, come up with $150,000
Fees.
development plan or a plan for them. And maybe as a city, we can think about like providing a pre-development subsidy if they can build within a year. And then, or we could look at something that says, you know, we're willing to work with you as a small business and do a development impact fee lowering if you're going to build within a year. You know, so really think about like how we can incentivize small development in the community that's more locally based, that's more about empowering our community, it's more about our residents who own little lots and really trying, and then citywide where we can really think about like a small, it's basically a development plan. You know, it's not an economic development plan. What I think of economic development, I'm thinking a lot of, oh, you know, and typically this is what cities do all the time. Oh, we can, you know, we'll help you on your business licenses. We'll help you go through the county processes, the state process. We'll help you with all of your, you know, licenses that you need from the city, whether it be fire, whether it be building and safety, whether it be, you know, police, et cetera. I think that's great. And we should do that all the time because who do we need to help businesses? But if there's an opportunity to really help, you know, mom and pop landowners that want to build, we should help them. We should figure that out. I think we do a good job of really placating to larger developers with bigger acreage. And I think Coachella can be unique in that we can target smaller acreages and then help to create a good small working class here. And I want to throw that at you guys for you guys to think about that citywide. And then I also believe we need to celebrate our successes. We need to tell the story. We're not doing a good job of it. I think people are wanting to tell the story for us. And I think we need to come up with like a little video strategy. So for example, you know, Steve and Myra, you know, they've done a great job with 6th Street Coffee. You know, they now expanded to the roastery or the Coachella utility store. That's a success we need to celebrate. Same thing with Nick, you know, that's another success that we need to celebrate. While she didn't keep her restaurant open, she'd become a little landowner, Rosie Ayon. You know, she's another one that from a standpoint of, she took on her mom's redevelopment project, they built a whole new center. And she has a lot of good things to say about the city, about how she was treated. And I'm saying that from a standpoint of we want to attract other small business minded people into the community. And it's got to be organic. It's got to be organic. And the success of what we're having here, because I don't know if you guys come here Saturday and Sunday. I'm here on Saturdays and Sundays. Like this past Sunday here in downtown, with like from 9 o'clock to the end of Suavecito Sunday, there was so much like just activity and people walking. This little nonprofit next door is doing wonders, like in terms of how many people they're bringing here on Saturdays and Sundays, and they're eating, they're eating hamburger, they're drinking beer, they're having coffee, they're eating bread. And I think what I'm really like just focusing on is more of the organic development of the city everywhere. Because the one thing about Coachella has got a lot of strong small business. And we need to tell those stories. You guys could probably identify other people that we can put on camera to tell that story so that other small businesses want to come and develop here. And there's going to be other opportunities. We're making investments, right, to buy the packing house, or I don't know if we're going to call it that. I'm thinking that eventually our development plan is gonna be to maybe start up like little small. Like, we're gonna have some businesses in there, right? I imagine. We need to start preparing for that. So I wanna just kind of put that out there of like how we can think of a small business, like videos. They don't have to be long, 2-3 minutes, 2-3 seconds. And we can use that for social media advertisement. We can use that for recruitment. We can use that for, you know, a lot of cool different things. And we have like really good, you know, we have, you know, like I think of Danny Hastings, like Danny Hastings, he did such an amazing job, but you know, Golden Voice is using him again, you know. I think of there's this cool little underground concert deal that's happening on 48. The Desert Sun featured it. It's happening in our city, and we're not gonna stop it. Not yet. Let it grow and let it become a problem. It's not a problem right now. But what's the gentleman's name? Let's see. He's a bigger guy. He does a bunch of podcasts. He yeah. He's amazing. He's amazing. He has a camera and everything else. There's those people like that they can really help to tell the story. You know what I mean? And it's not so much to go like, oh, we don't have to go like go corporate. I don't go corporate. I don't go business. Try to use people that are really creative in how they're doing video, you know, and really framing like a different like tone. And then in that same conversation, I think it's important to start capturing what the sentiment of residents are. You know, young, old, middle age. Because I think it's positive. I think there's a little bit of a vibe occurring, and we gotta really kind of push that out there. That's 3 things for now. But I'd like I'd like this committee to meet more frequently. You know, just because I want to try to move some things, and part of, you know, it's really thinking about what other communities are doing. And being strategic. And I think as well, we should be embracing food, like the gastronomia, the food that's coming out of Coachella, legal, halfway permitted or illegal. We got to figure that out, and we got to tell a cool story about it. And it's the truth. Like here's a perfect example. There's a little seafood restaurant. It's called Wamuchi that just opened up, and go in there right now. They're killing it. Like you try to find a seat, you're gonna wait 15-20 minutes. That was an illegal business that started on Avenue 53 and by the Catholic Church, and they got really big. They became very successful. Eddie's passed the state law that allowed the home kitchens. They took advantage of it. They outgrew it. Boom. Same thing with Taco 760 out of Coachella. They were selling that birria, Sinaloa birria that's hanging out on our edge. They're from Coachella, and they got kicked out of the city. So again, going back to embracing the food, the gastronomia. Like it's huh?
Really?
There you go. Did you know that there's a sushi restaurant in El Paseo where Ingen Swordfish, or sorry, so it's the guy's a Coachella resident, and he has this great. We don't have a sushi restaurant here,
We don't.
so I know I'm driving you guys crazy with throwing out ideas, but this is what this economic development committee was designed to do, was to really try to focus in on like getting good economic development in the city. Oh, and then another thing, I am tired of everybody hitting me up for Coachella gear, and we need to go ahead and procure gear and start selling our gear. Everybody wants to buy it, and we need to, if we need to put a budget together, and then, you know, maybe upsize it 10%, and just start selling the gear. People want our mugs, people want our hats, people want our shirts, people want our jackets, people want, you name it. like I've given away a lot of my clothes just because people want it, you know? And let them have it. Like, let's sell it to them. The other thing, you know, there's no reason why, from a public works perspective, like we need to have 100 of our old signs just sitting in our yard. We can sell them. People will buy it. Maybe, I don't know, if you could find a, if you could find a use, I guess, but people want our gear. And you know, if Beyonce took a photo in front of Welcome to Coachella, you don't think our gear is popular?
I'm an outsider. I've something made my extra jacket.
See,
Well, now you can buy one.
no, I'm just saying, you're one of us, give her one, you know,
Totally
get
get
it out of somebody's budget, but people want our gear. You know, and you and
The annexes just sell all over here.
you should, you could. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Coachella gear, people will love buying, you know, that's where maybe the idea comes with the chamber, right? Like the chamber's right here. Everybody wants space, but nobody's in there like actually manning it. Like, okay, if you're not gonna man the space, leave the space. A lot of people want the space. Your nonprofit list is going crazy, particularly after they find out what they're paying for a square foot. But people want the gear, so put this on that, put it on there. Let's get this gear going. And I mean, it's pretty simple. Don't go crazy. Let it all pay for itself. You know what I mean? Like let it just, we can sell gear, right, Bill? Yeah, as a charter, we can sell our gear.
That's a great idea. A city store. Consider backpacks, by the way. Throwing it out there.
Yeah, and our gear is nice. Our gear is like, we got some nice stuff. I mean, they do it at Washington, DC, but the Capitol, yeah, you can sell it. We can sell it all day. Yeah, so anything else? I mean, you guys let me know. Let us know. Let us know. And I'm getting better at saying let us know. No, I'm not. Let us know.
Some of the stuff has come up and I think like we're looking at a lot of this stuff too with the upcoming purchase, if that all works out. And so.
I really think it's gonna work out, and we gotta be up, you know, just really forward looking and will it in. And then but part of it is it's important that we just start cultivating that culture of small business development, and it's very unique to I think that like it's unique to everybody in every community, but I think that there's something that hasn't been exploited yet on the just taking advantage of our demographic. And I throw that out there because and I'm gonna throw out some names that some folks may not know, but they're basically they're big food markets, and they're called tandis, and the name gastronomia is that's really embraced out in Mexicali, that has a very similar culture. That food scene over there is like killed it. It's beer, they're basically cooking with every produce that they create in that valley, which mimics our valley, and they're doing farm to table. And it's like you go there and it's just a feast. And I think the upside on our end here is that people, like, if they do a secondary business, there's a lot of people moving to food, to gastronomia, and like that, besides service and everything else. But food is something that I think some of the tastes that are coming out of people's homes are pretty good. They're really good.
Yeah.
They're cooking from home.
You know what? They are.
They are. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
The former council member's mom was like a known cake maker throughout the city and throughout the East Valleys. I mean, that lady was booked like 2 years out, and she'd build cakes as tall as this room in her garage from Coachella. Like, you know, crazy, and really good cakes, like just really good cakes. So yeah, I think we have to really think about how and you're staffed up. You know, people can get very creative. And then we just gotta set the directive of what we want to be. By the way, and I'm gonna say it, and I know sometimes it drives people crazy. We need to think of ourselves as competitive with other cities. They are taking our ideas and they're running with them. They are. And they've recognized some of the cool things that we've been able to do. They just feed it with a little bit of money. For example, when we started doing food and we did the food park, people think Indio was the first one to mimic us, but it wasn't. It was Palm Desert. Palm Desert did it on top of the mall on the 3-story parking structure. And they got with a gal who really kind of took that model and put some money behind it, because the person we work with didn't really have a lot of money and wasn't really trying to, like, Eric had a different model, wasn't really thinking about investing, but that gal did. And she's blown up that Palm Desert food scene. And it mimicked a lot of what we've started originally. We just haven't kept it up at it. You know, we're very spotty. We're inconsistent. And so we need to stay consistent. You know, there's these other deals where there's these big trendy, they're like moving, closing, like pop-ups that people sell local art, local clothes that they've made, brands, and they travel by like 300 people, and they show up into a town and they like work with the locals and they create like a fair, like a bazaar. Huh? Like it's like a bazaar. It's like a bazaar. It's a cool little gypsy deal, but it's a bazaar where it's like it happens, and it's kind of neat.
Pete Salcido is doing a great job over in Palm Desert. And I was like, and I went to the event and it was amazing. It's like totally believe in small business. And so I was there and I'm like, hey, how come we don't have this in Coachella? You know, but anyway, so I do realize that food is definitely a driving force and for all of us. And so so we'll look into that. You know, so we want to bring everybody, you know, ways out in the shadows where we just, you know, cottage food thing.
Yeah.
Come forward and think about doing something amazing here. So
Hey, you came from Big Bear. You got some great I mean, I go down that, when I go to Big Bear and I walk down that center, aisle that they got over there, it's pretty neat. Like what's gone on in Big Bear, from like trading posts to restaurants and different farmers' gardens. And every time I think about like the bulb outs, I think of you. You know, it's like, oh, you did this, or maybe they took your idea and then they did it after you left. I don't know, one or two, but what do you think? Yeah.
Big Bear's good too, you have a very kind of concise and consistent theme. Every single very good, have the bear culture, it's gonna have the outline thing, so. And then we get to a
Area to target.
it gives you a very targeted area. People should go to that area for to experience that.
Yeah. And that was something that the professor talked about on Saturday, about how we can like really think of moving on a consistent design that's different, but you know, it's unique and it's completely ours. And how do we integrate that architecture with the economics, you know, and it's organic, and he called it kind of multi-generational, but also multi-income. And so that was a good conversation, by the way. I enjoyed it. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And I think that's what this committee should really be, is focus on driving the economics, being unique, driving the people, and then embracing our demographic. We're young, 27, medium age, half of it under 18. Actually, give me the updated version, because somebody said, Mayor, you're not 27 years old anymore. But you know, just like, so I if we can get the updated demographic information on our medium age, and then
Yeah, no, just to us too, on our sense, just to us and census, but update it. It should be, because we'll integrate that into our talking points. All right, time with those a lot.
No.
We say a lot.